Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today, I want to talk about how the fact that I believe that the human race is way more beyond numb enough to deal with the reality that there's an extraterrestrial presence here. Now, I know I get a lot of arguments from different people who say, well, there's no way they're going to come out with this because of the panic it will cause. I just can't buy that anymore. I mean, I look around this world and I see what's happening on a day-to-day basis. I mean, in the United States right here, we have mass shootings just every day, every single day. We're not doing, and we don't do anything about it. The politicians we put in place, they don't do anything about it. There's nothing going on. It doesn't stop. I mean, there's some outrage about it, but nothing ever gets done. Uh, it's just I think the human race has reached a point where if it was announced by somebody, and I don't think, again, I just talked about in my previous podcast, I just don't believe that it's going to come from the government. I don't believe that there's going to be an announcement. At this point, I am convinced that there's going to be no announcement coming from any government entity anytime soon. But I do believe this. I do believe that that it could come out in a different fashion from regular citizens somehow. I don't know how, but it's going to take chance and if basically the courage. It's going to take courage from somebody if the right person comes across the evidence. And that person's smart enough to understand the implications of what it will mean once this evidence is shown to the public, then we can get disclosure that way. I think. Well, I don't think the United States government, for instance, I don't think we're ever going to get the truth about Roswell. They're never going to release that publicly. I'm certain, at least not in my lifetime, and probably several lifetimes in the future. I just don't see it happening. I don't think the governments are not going to do that. They're never going to admit that they were lying to the people that they served for all these decades, because I think at first, when this first happened, when officials within the United States, for instance, knew that there was an extraterrestrial presence here, when after the Roswell crash and other incidents after that, when it was understood that this is aliens from other worlds, well, I think there was part of it was, well, we got to keep this secret because of the panic it might cause. I believe that was something at first. I brought that up a number of times. But over the decades now, the human race has become completely numb to these kind of things. I don't think that there's going to be any sort of mass panic. There will be some people who will freak out, of course, but it's not going to be any kind of mass panic. Like right now, like we're getting, like, even though we had this terrible hearing just the other day, where it looks like the government is basically going backward. We're definitely a step, as far as I'm concerned, that was definitely a step backward, right? We're not, it seems like there's no effort, there's no desire by people within the government, even our elected officials, to pry the truth out of the secret control group, right? There's just no effort to do that. Instead, we have Arrow, which is basically Project Blue Book Part 2, actually. Project Blue Book Part 2, right? And that's not gonna get us anywhere. Okay, it's not even as good as Project Blue Book as far as I'm concerned. We're not getting anywhere. It's basically they basically decided to pull the rug out from this effort, which, when it first started in 2017, it looked like we might get disclosure as years went on. It looked like this was the beginning of a slow disclosure. But then around 2021, 2022, things started to change, and now it's very clear that there's no desire by the government to make this known to the world that there is an extraterrestrial presence here. They just keep lying. They keep doubling down on the lies. Like when you hear Sean Kirkpatrick stand in a hearing, said in a hearing and said there's no evidence for this, that's doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down, because how many times have we been lied to about this? This is just the 1,000th time. I mean, how many times have government officials lied about this? And they continue to do that because they have no plans, no desires to ever come out with the truth. So the only way the truth is going to come out is if somehow something happens where the aliens show up in such a fashion where it becomes undeniable, or there's a crash somewhere in a major city or near a major city or near even in a suburb somewhere, something like that, where it becomes you can't hide it anymore. Or some civilians somehow come up with the absolute evidence, like an alien itself, a live alien, a dead alien, an alien craft, a crashed alien craft, and present it to the public before there's any chance of the government to try to step in and cover it up, before the secret control group. It's not the entire federal government of the United States. It's just this little portion, and in that portion, it's all compartmentalized. That's how it works. But we're numb to this now. We are absolutely, the human race is more than ready. It has, I know there's some people out there, like, in fact, the one of my contacts is this anonymous source, this former retired electronics engineer who worked for NASA and the CIA, and also he did defense contracts for private weapons corporations that worked for the government. And he's of the belief that the reason they will never come out with the truth is because of the implications, that people will be too afraid because there's alien abductions, that they'll have to admit to all these things then, because people are not going to like that. Of course they're not going to like it, but guess what? There's a lot of people who already believe it is happening, and so it's just we need to get the rest of the people on board who don't believe it. That's one of the things that needs to happen here. But I don't buy that. I used to think that was it, but I've changed my mind over the past several months, as some of you know. I think it's because of the greedy weapons manufacturers. They just want to keep this secret. They want to develop super weapons using reverse engineered technology in an effort to take over the world, to conquer the world, to control the people. Whatever their plans are, money, it's greed, power. It's all those kind of bad human things all wrapped up into one. That's what I think is happening. And then here's another thing. Before I get into one of the big reasons why I believe that we are numb enough to deal with this reality, and it has nothing to do with the panic that it might cause. Before I get into that, I just want to point out that since this went down since this hearing, this Senate subcommittee hearing, where Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the director of ARROW, the all-domain anomalous resolution office, right? Before he talked to some of the senators, the handful of senators that showed up, there was only 3 senators that were asking questions. None of the other ones seemed to care to show up because it's big to them. It's nothing. They don't even want to talk about it anymore. They're sick of talking about it. It's not. I guess it's not doing anything for their careers, or they're not going to receive campaign contributions from the military-industrial complex if they keep trying to push for disclosure. Okay, maybe that's what it is. That's what I'm starting to think it is anyway. Because I'm starting to lose respect. I mean, you have to understand how politicians work. It's all about the money, okay? They don't. The only reason they get into the positions they are in is because they receive contributions from big money corporations and weapons weapons manufacturers. Lockheed Martin, Halliburton, Raytheon. All these different. Northrop Grumman, all these, they'll receive millions of dollars those companies dish out all the time for these candidates. So they accept this money and then, okay, we'll work for you. What do you want us to do? It's not about serving the people. It's about serving these companies. That's why they get big, giant tax breaks all the time. There's always these big votes to get tax breaks in this country. And nothing really helps the regular citizen, right? It's all about helping the big companies, right? And the billionaires, the ones who have already owned 10 yachts and 3 mansions. It's about helping those people out, not the little guys out there. That's how this whole thing works. And basically, the people, the senators and the representatives, the vast majority, about 98.5% of them, right? They're just puppets of these corporations. So that's why we're never going to get anywhere. The way things are set up, it's like a lose-lose situation for those interested in UFO disclosure. It's just not going to happen because of these things. And let me just tell you how this affected. Since this hearing, everyone recognized, everyone in the UFO community recognized how much of a disaster it was after it happened. And on the reverse side of it, debunkers looked at this. This was a big, giant win for debunkers. Okay, you had, of course, the lead debunker of our age, Mick West, declared that ufology is dead, right? Because that's what he thinks. Ufology is dead. And in a way, I'm gonna have to say this. Unfortunately. This kind of the ufology that's been ongoing for the past 5 years might be dead. We might need to move back to the same kind of ufology we had before, because I don't see this going anywhere, right? I just don't see it. But this guy also, at the same time, right? And he tries to point out that, and then before I make this next statement, there was also an interview recently, right after this, with ex-CIA official John Ramirez, and this is a big thing on Twitter right now. I'll leave links for all this so you could look at it yourself. But among other things, Ramirez, in an interview with Stephen Bassett, made a statement that disclosure will happen in months, not years. Even though, despite of what just happened, he's saying that there's things lining up in the background that disclosure is going to happen very soon, within months. Not years, within months. But here's the problem. And unfortunately, I have to, at this point, I hope I'm wrong, but at this point right now, I have to agree with someone like Mick West on this because basically, we've been hearing this a lot. We keep hearing this. Oh, it's coming. 2023 is it. Okay, we're in April 2023. I mean, is it going to be the same thing in May, June, July, August? I mean, is there going to be something that happens in 2023, actually? Or like we heard things like this in 2022. I mean, we keep hearing this, that something's going to happen. Disclosure will happen not in months, not years. What do you mean? Okay, I mean, we keep hearing this, and there's no promises. It's the same sentence over and over again. There's talk of whistleblowers going to spill all the beans, but it seems like the Congress doesn't even want to work with these whistleblowers. I have a suggestion to any whistleblower. Forget about Congress. Just come out to the public already. Hey, it shouldn't matter. Just come out to the public already. The citizenry of the United States will stand behind you, I assure you. Instead of having to go to Congress and talk to Congress behind closed doors about what you know about UFOs, I mean, I think you need to come out publicly with that, not tell Congress behind closed doors, because obviously, if the hearing from the other day was any indication, you can't trust those people either. Right? They're not. You can't trust them. If somebody has information about or something that could absolutely end this whole debate for once and for all and bring the truth to the table finally, bring it forward to the public. Don't forget about Congress. Just bring it forward already. Give it. If you have something, what do you got? What do you got that's going to prove this? I mean, we need absolute proof to end this whole debate. But see, the whole problem is. We keep hearing this and nothing ever happens. I hope I'm wrong. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I hope I'm wrong, but I hope something does happen in 2023. But it doesn't seem like it is to me. We keep getting a lot of, even from the people in the UFO community that seem to be on the side of disclosure. We keep getting sentences like this. Disclosure is going to happen in months, not years. Things are lining up behind the scenes that you just don't know about. We've been hearing this for a long time. It's time to, show your cards. It's time to show the information. What are you waiting for? What's the big wait about? Why do we have to wait for this anymore? If you have something, bring it out to the public already. This is getting upsetting. It's very maddening. Now, this is what Mick West said. He said, prediction, with regard to this new information from Ramirez. He says, prediction, something will happen sometime in the future. Keep waiting. Are you being strung along with promises like this, yet nothing really happens that makes a difference? Maybe just a tiny little bit you're in a cult. Well, let me tell you something, Mick. No, it's not a cult. I mean, obviously, if it was a cult, then I don't believe that. I see this too. It's not people who understand that there is an extraterrestrial presence here. They're upset too. Of course, there's going to be some people who think, oh yeah, we're still going to get something. They're still hanging on, hope against hope, right? But it's not a cult. It's just people wanting this to end. Right? People who are hopeful to see it come to an end because they know that there's something going on based on their own research, based on their own experiences, whatever. But I'll tell you who is in a cult. It's the people that follow people like you, Mick. That's who's in a cult. I actually wrote back to him. I tweeted back to him to that comment. I said, cults keep their brainwashed dum-dums in line, like the debunker cult, despite mountains of evidence that has accumulated over the decades that clearly shows there's an ET presence here. Debunker cultists flock to their high priest to be assured it's not real. Sorry, it's real. And then I added on to that. In fact, you should start speaking tongues to them. They'll understand it. If it doesn't work right away, just resort to those sock puppets to give yourself an artificial boost. They'll fall in line. The other day when after that hearing was over, remember during that hearing they showed the one anomalous object that was shown was this little orb that went flying past the camera during a conflict in the Middle East somewhere. And Mick West within seconds was on Twitter saying it was a balloon. How does he know that? He doesn't know that. He just provides that because he is a cult leader. Mick West is a cult leader. And he says these things to calm down the people that are flocking to him on a daily basis. He's like their high priest. He should start wearing a hood and a cape. and have his own altar, when he makes his stupid videos. Because guess what, Mick? I'm sorry to tell you, Mick, but there is an extraterrestrial presence here, and you're going to be proven wrong sometime. Sorry, old chap, sorry. But that's just the case with him. But again, what I want to talk about here is the fact that the main thing I want to get into today with this podcast is the fact that we are numb to this, and I'm going to prove it. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Like I've been saying, the human race, we're ready. We're ready. One way or the other, the human race is ready for this, and I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what people in the secret control group believe. If they believe that they're holding on to this information because they're afraid of the panic it will cause, well, guess what? I don't believe that for 1 minute. They're holding on to it because of their own greed and they're because they're power hungry. That's the main reason. It has nothing to do with the concern. They want to be able to control this world. If you're the one who develops this technology, you're the one who has is able to reverse engineer it successfully and come up with new technology that's based on this, and you have control of this planet, not only of other countries perhaps, but the people in the country that you're supposed to be serving, the money that you're receiving all these tax dollars from for all these years. But I mean, because here's the thing, I believe that we are completely ready. I mean, we're numb. We're numb enough with all the things that have happened over the decades, over the last 76 years since this thing started. You think about the way things used to be to the way things are now. For one thing, I mean, I just want to point something out. I'm going to use this as an example. Back in late 1973, the movie The Exorcist was released, okay? And when that movie came out, I remember I was 5 years old at the time when that movie came out, and I remember hearing about it at the time. And I remember my late Aunt Jeanette and my late Uncle Miles, Miles was only a teenager at the time. They went to the drive-ins I believe it was during the summer of 1974 to see it. And I remember hearing this story at the time that when they get back, Miles was so scared that he had to turn every single light on in the house, and he was up all night long. He couldn't fall asleep. He was so scared. That movie made him so scared that it kept him up all night. Today, the movie The Exorcist is as tame as The Wizard of Oz. Okay, that might be an exaggeration. It's not as tame as The Wizard of Oz, but it's still, I mean, comparatively, there's so many different movies now that contain that kind of language. I mean, what made that movie so shocking at the time was the profanity and the horror and the special effects. People have never seen anything like that before. The idea of someone being possessed by Satan, there was just nothing like that before. I mean, movies before just it was only for a few years where you started hearing cursing and profanity in movies and seeing a little bit more graphic violence in movies. In the late 60s, things start changing in the way movies were presented, and The Exorcist was like way over the top. One of the early movies where it was showing people something that they just never saw before. And I'm just going to read this off of Twitter. It says here, there was right before the movie was released, it was shown only one time in a sneak preview, and when it was over, one of the Warner Brothers executives, Warner Brothers had released this movie. He just sat there and he asked his colleagues. He said, "What the f did we just see?" These Warner executives, they believed this is a quote from Wikipedia, by the way. They believed that the film was brilliant, but did not know how to market it, and decided on the limited early release after Christmas. And then the movie ended up with mixed reviews from that sneak preview. But despite it and the controversies, The Exorcist was a runaway hit. It received some mixed reviews, some from critics. I mean, some critics thought it was fantastic. Other critics were just horrified by it. In New York City, where its initial run was limited to a few theaters, patrons endured cold as severe as 6 degrees Fahrenheit, sometimes with rain and sleet, waiting for hours in long lines during what is normally a slow time of year for the movies to buy tickets, many not for the first time. The crowds gathered outside theaters, sometimes rioted, and police were called in to quell disturbances in not only New York, but Kansas City. The New York Times asked some of those in line what drew them there. Those who had read the novel accounted for about a third. They wanted to see if the film could realistically depict some of the scenes in the book. Others said, we're here because we're nuts and because we wanted to be part of the madness. A repeat viewer told the newspaper that it was the best horror film he had seen in decades. Much better than Psycho. You feel contaminated when you leave the theater. There's something that is impossible to erase. Many made a point of saying that they had either never waited in line that long for a movie before or not in a long time. It makes the movie better. William Hurt, the late actor, then a drama student, said of the experience, the more you pay for something, the more it's worth. Reports of strong, and this is the part that I thought was interesting about this at the time. It says the reports of strong audience reactions were widespread. Many viewers fainted. A woman in London, when the film opened there, reportedly fainted before the film even began. A woman in New York was said to have miscarried during a showing. One man at another showing lasted only 20 minutes before he had to be carried out on a stretcher. Nausea was the most commonly reported reaction. We have a plumber practically living here now, said the manager of Toronto's University Theatre on Bloor Street, at the time selling its 1,440 seats out 4 times a day. The smell in the bathrooms is awful. People are rushing in and they're missing the toilet seat by inches. Viewers seem to be particularly disturbed by the crucifix scenes. The theatre reported depleting its supply of smelling salts. Many patrons left before the end or waited for viewing companions in the lobby. Okay, I'm not going to read. You get the idea. There was ambulances waiting outside of some theaters. People were fainting. People were vomiting. It was just a horrible, but they wanted to go see it anyway because that's what everyone was talking about. I mean, and this is 50 years ago now. So, I mean, again, this is that long ago. People didn't, they were scared of it, but they still went to see it in droves. They were interested in it. It's the same thing with this. And this is 50 years ago now when this was going on. Now you see movies like this on a regular basis. It's par for the course. Not just movies in the theater, but there's TV programs, made for cable TV shows that are just as gory and worse actually than The Exorcist. But I guess the whole point of it is that even though people were scared of it and they heard all these stories, they still couldn't help themselves and they wanted to see it. I think it's the same thing with the UFO phenomenon. Some people might be afraid of it. Even the cult that follows the debunkers like Mick West, they want to keep being told it's not real. But at the end, when the truth comes out, they'll fall in line. They'll open up to reality. Most of them. Some of them will probably still want to be told lies by their debunker high priests. But that's where I'm at with this. I just think that we're ready. The world is ready for this. There's nothing that there's absolutely, at this point, right, there's absolutely nothing that should prevent people. Nobody's going to be, it's not going to be people running through the streets panicking, right? It's just not going to happen. People are going to be fascinated. They're going to want to know more. They're going to know all about these things. It will be the talk of the international news for probably a few months, but we'll calm down. We'll go back to normal when it's all over with, right? It will be a sensation just like The Exorcist was back in the day. And there's other movies over time or events that happen where it's just so sensational and then everyone's focused on a certain thing for a long time, but then they get over it. And that's going to be the same thing with the UFO phenomenon. And with the reality that there's an extraterrestrial presence here, right? I've come to terms with it. I understand that there's something here. It took me a long time to understand it and realize it. Of course, I've always talked about my story when I was a kid in the late 1970s. Almost 9 years old, I wake up in the middle of the night and there's something in the room. There's some being in the bedroom, and it was not a human being. It was right there, standing right beside my bed, and there was some sort of an electronic humming sound that accompanied this thing. I don't know what that sound was. Some people tell me they think it might have been the sound of one of the craft that might have been maybe hovering right above my house. This was in the attic, but I saw this thing. I didn't know what it was at the time. I thought it was the devil. That was the extent of my imagination at the time, because I didn't even know there was a thing such as extraterrestrial abduction or alien abduction or extraterrestrial visitation or anything like that. I never even thought any of that stuff was real at the time. It took me 10 years to realize that that's what that thing was. I didn't know. But I do know now. And then in 1994, of course, during a fishing trip with a friend, a flying saucer came flying right up to us. It was within 20 feet of where we were standing. Actually, my buddy was even closer. He was standing underneath the edge of it, and it was only 2.5 stories off the ground. I've seen these things. I know they're real. But and that's why I feel sometimes like the guy in an invasion, the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You remember in that old 1956 movie, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, there was a town that got taken over by these beings that showed up in seed pods. They would mimic your exact features, and then your body would disintegrate, and then they would take over with all your memories and everything, but there was no emotion to them. And it was taking over this small California town. And at the end of the movie, the guy's running around on the highway. He finally gets out of that town, and he's running on a highway screaming his head off. And one of the things he's yelling is, "They're here already!" That's what I feel. That's what I'm saying right now. They're here already. Like, so what are we playing this game for? And why are we playing this game for so long? At least in that movie, at the end of the movie, once he got people to finally believe him in the end, they tried to do something about it. Here, right, we don't get nothing. We get told, "Oh, you must be crazy, or you were drunk, or you're stoned, or you're stupid, or you saw something else, or you thought it was something else, or you're dreaming, or whatever." There's always some other nonsensical excuse. People are ready. I mean, if the people who have dealt with these things over the years, there's been alien people who have been abducted by these things and are on a regular basis and end up going to see a doctor about it. They've dealt with it. They've been dealing with it. They can handle it. If they can handle it, then the people who have not apparently been affected by this, they can handle it too. I mean, it's just like anything else. There's all kinds of pitfalls and disasters that are waiting around us for any of us around every corner when you go outside. I mean, you could walk into a supermarket later on today and some maniac will show up with a rifle and it's all over in 1 minute, right? Or you could be walking in the woods somewhere. Next thing you know, you're being attacked by a bear. Or you could be walking down your car could break down in the middle of nowhere. And you're walking down the highway, and next thing you know, you're getting abducted by an alien. So what? It's all part of the same alphabet soup. I think the human race is ready to deal with this. It doesn't matter. So it has nothing to do with the reason the secret is being kept. Has nothing to do with what the concern for panic and how the world will react. No, it has everything to do with greed, money, power. That's it. That's all it has. It has nothing to do with anything else but that. I'm convinced of it. I mean, to go on this long is absolutely absurd, and it's time to end this. It's time to bring the human race up to date, up to speed on this. The entire human race, not just an elite few in some secret base in Nevada deserts or Wright-Patterson Field or something. All scientists need to be brought into this. It's time to take the lid off this thing. And I tell you, if there's somebody out there that has the evidence, right, and you're sitting on it, then do something about it. Contact somebody who could help you and get it out, get this information out. Let's end this debate already. Instead of waiting for the government to do something, because if that hearing was any indication, we're not going to get anything from these people. Not a thing, man. They're not giving us They're going to give us nothing. So if somebody out there has anything, right, it's time to bring it forward because this is ridiculous already. Anyway, until next time.